The caterhamracer.com America's Road Trip is sponsored by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage. By Design and Display Structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens. And by Just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7. We're also supported by Darren Burke, Performance Driver Coach, and by FPZero Simulators. So, ladies and gents, it has all built down to this. 5 weeks of competition, 4 qualifying races in our last chance saloon. It all brings us down to one final race to bring the curtain down on Season 4 of caterhamracer.com's Caterham Esports action. This is the finale of the America's Road Trip, and it comes at a circuit which is certainly going to be, in many ways, the final boss of this series, because we've had some of the great circuits already, like Watkins Glen, Interlagos, through Road Atlanta and Road America, and even the last chance at the daunting Laguna Seca circuit. But they ain't raced a circuit like this before. It's Mont Tremblant, which is in San Javit in Canada, to only trip across north of the North American border into Canada. And it is certainly a circuit that is not to be taken lightly, as you'll see. We'll have an onboard lap in a little while, where my very capable co-commentator Chris Hutchinson will, talk us through some of the main points. Scott Woodwiss and Chris Hutchinson again to go through all the action, what is set to be a very exciting night of racing. And Chris, this is a race that we've built up on for the last 5 weeks, had some great racing along the way, but now we really do have the best of the best from everyone that's qualified so far. And if we thought that the first 5 weeks provided action week after week after week, and I really hope this is not an anticlimax, this has all the makings to be one of potentially the best, the most tense, but the most entertaining and possibly the most competitive races we've genuinely ever had since we started. This has the makings, potentially, being an absolute barnstormer.
Absolutely. Good evening, everybody. I'm looking forward to this, of course. And yeah, I mean, if there's a good quality field of drivers that we have here, all proven that they can, compete at the front of races and remain consistent. So I am very hopeful that they are going to put on a great show for us. And this track sort of leads to some great racing. There's overtaking opportunities, there's gradient, there's definitely chances and opportunities for mistakes and errors, and you'll certainly see drivers running wide and sort of missing braking points, for example. It's such a tricky track to absolutely nail the whole lap. So again, even if someone does start running away from it, there's a good chance that they will make a mistake and get drawn back into the battle. So, yep, we have seen several drivers on the field tonight sort of pulling away in the past, but it's been a while since they've all been on the server all at one time. We see David Rowe and John Lang, they're getting so desperately close. 8 minutes, just 9 minutes left of qualifying, but here's the list of drivers that have qualified for tonight's race, Scott.
Yeah, so this is who we've got. Now, for those who've been following the season, there'll be 1 or 2 drivers here who you may not have expected to be here, and also a couple who you may have expected to be here, but we'll explain the process nonetheless. So I went through this beforehand, so hopefully I can get it right this time. So going through who qualified when, the first 3 drivers who qualified were James Murphy, Christian Zaruta and Glenn McConaughey, who all booked their spots as early as the first qualifying heat at the Watkins Glen. Then, for the second heat, the winner of that was Jensen Hassler, who actually won 2 races because he also won the race at Road Atlanta. However, he is one of 3 drivers that can't be here tonight, sadly, so therefore his qualifying spot has been given up to another driver, which we'll get to later on. But it still means that Mark Bennett and Guy Crawford, the 2 drivers that qualified with him, still keep their spots. As do also Paul Fernhoff, Richard Gallagher and Chris Skillicorn, who qualified via Road Atlanta. And then we have it's Alistair Gregg, Steve McMaster and Tom McEwing, who were the top 3 from our race at Road America. And then we get into 7 drivers, and we say 7 because they've all basically moved up from the last chance saloon race at Laguna Seca. So Will Rossetti was the man who's in second place because the winner of that race, Jaroslav Cherny, as impressive as a win it was, again, sadly can't be here to compete in the final tonight, so he has had to give up his qualifying spot. But we still see Will Rossetti, David Rowe, Andrew Parker, John Lang and James Fowler were all the other 5 drivers that qualified on merit in terms of at least in the original top 6. We then see Jason Knight, who was the first beneficiary from the qualifiers in the extra spot that came up from those who couldn't attend. And then we also see Steve Arnell. Now, Steve, if you remember watching the last chance qualifier, had a rather unfortunate incident where he had made contact with Anthony Cook on the first lap, exiting the corkscrew into Rainy Corner. Now, as courteous, the ever courteous Anthony realised that was an incident that was kind of more of his doing in some cases. So what he's very graciously done is he's given up the spot which would have been his back to Steve, which means that he can take part in tonight's America's Road Trip final. So that's the 18 cars that we have. Arguably, it is, not counting guys like Cherney and a couple of others who probably could and should have been there, Jez Hassler and guys like Cherney. Also, we have the fastest 18 drivers that we could pick up, and that means then that whilst the majority of those drivers have only raced really not too much amongst themselves in terms of up at the front for positions, it means now that all these drivers come together. It's going to make it a race very much akin to those we saw back in season 2, Chris, and those when we saw some of the really strong drivers coming up fighting for a championship. It's bringing them all back together again for what should be, as we've said, a very competitive race. What makes it different this time, and something we've said time and time again throughout this season, is the just how much the field has closed up more by the fact in terms of how much more competitive they've become, how closer the pack is how much tighter the pack's close together, and how much improvement all these drivers have made over the course of the last couple of seasons, particularly the big leap we've seen in the quality of some of the driving and the skill and the improvements from seasons 3 to 4 that we have between the European Winter Series to the America's Road Trip here. And that, I think, is what's going to make it one of the most competitive races we've ever had, because of that step up in levels. And we've talked about drivers like David Rowe and Christian Cerruti, where they've openly said these drivers are not just drivers turning up now just to get a good finish. They've put the work in to be as quick as them, if not quicker than them, and they didn't find it a walkover by any means to get these qualifying spots. They really did have to work for it, maybe harder than some of them actually anticipated than they would have done in the first place.
Yeah, well, look at the times that we've got now with 5 minutes left of qualifying to go. James Murphy is right up there with a 1:46.0, and anything right down at the bottom of the 46 is a great lap. So we do occasionally see people dipping into the 45s, but yeah, the whole field is covered by just 1.2 seconds. So that just proves, anyone mortals like you and me, Scott, if we jumped on here and tried to put that lap in, we would find the 46 very hard to achieve, and the whole field here is within nearly just over that second mark of that time, with still some time left for them to put even better laps in. David Rowe, you can see here at the moment, is down in 13th. He hasn't been able to get on the simulator and practice, and it just shows you do need to be right on your game to be able to compete near the top of that field. So he's 7/10 off that leading time, and you can see him pushing the limits of the track here as he goes up through Bridge Bend. So we've also got people like Richard Gallagher, you can see up there in 3rd place at the moment. He's done some stellar practice and working with Darren Burke to improve his times in the time between the last race and this one. So as we see David Rowe locking up there, drifting off wide, we're going to see that so often tonight around that final bend. It's not going to be an uncommon sight at all. But yeah, Richard Gallagher up in 3rd place, maybe higher than we were expecting to see him for sure.
And also some other likely suspects, Guy Crawford up there in 2nd place, and Andy Parker, who we've talked about so many times across this series, where he's come so close to qualifying, and we've got up there, he's been up there towards the front and in a position to win. We even get a podium finish in those top 3 spots, and then just the luck didn't seem to come with him, or he got involved in incidents that either weren't of his doing, or in some cases were of his doing, getting a bit too ambitious. And then he finally managed to put it all together and have a nice trouble-free race to finally get through, although Layston probably he felt he would have liked to have done, or should have felt it, or felt he should have done, when he managed to get through at Laguna Seca and pick up on the road what was a 4th place. So he'll be looking to try and make the most of all the attrition that he's had also from Darren Burke as well. Darren, of course, one of our very valuable supporters of the series. And again, whilst I'm talking about them, a very quick shout out again, once again, has been to the top of the programme, to DPR Motorsport, Just Add Lightness, to Design for Space Structures, Darren Burke Performance Driver Coach, and FPZero Simulators. Thank you to all of them for supporting this 4th season of caterhamracer.com. And as we'll remind you at the end of the broadcast, please do go and check them all out, and if you can spare it, give them your patrons as well, because they're all fantastic entities and supporters of what we're doing here. So it's great stuff. Now let's jump on board with James Murphy then, and I'll let Chris, the racing driver who's much more experienced around these sims than I am, at least in recent times, to talk us through a lap. This is a fantastic circuit, and one that certainly deserves someone who knows what they're talking about to talk us around. So Chris, start with an onboard lap.
Here we come into turn 1 then. It's a very, very fast, open, over the hill corner. just clip the apex late and you've got to get on the accelerator and hope you don't drift off too wide. We'll see some people going out there. The end of this curve is the braking point into the S's. You want to hug this inside bend as long as you can to open up this left-hand bend. You've got to monster these curves, as James demonstrates ably. Then again, you've got to run a risk of running wide there. The kink left here is really not a corner of any merit, but if you're going side by side you might have some problems. And another corner here, only dropping a gear into this right-hander, and again you've got to pick your acceleration point to make sure you don't drift off too wide. As we're coming down to this bend at the bottom, it's not turn number 8. It feels like a hairpin in the car, but actually, if you look at the track map, it's fairly open. You take an early apex and you treat it like a double apex corner. Just drift away from the curb and come back to it. As we're off down the longest straight we've got, although it's not that straight, it's got a big hump in the middle of it. As we're following James Fowler, probably not close enough to get a toe, but maybe James is going to come and interfere with our lap towards the end. We've got an extremely fast right-hander coming up here. You drop a couple of gears, but again, you've got to be mindful of the next bend afterwards. So we tend to hug the inside curb here. James, again, doing a great demonstration to open up this left-hander. Again, you've got to pick your acceleration mark up this hill towards Bridge Bend. Really complicated bend where you want to get the car turned, but you're just going over a crest. The rear end always goes light on you. We're getting close into that toe range now, so James coming up to the most complicated braking point we've got here. Missing this braking point, you will cause yourself all sorts of hassle. So we'll see whether he can hook up the apex. He does. James Fowler ahead of us doesn't make the apex. We grab an early gear and we're into this final bend. Nothing problem around this bend except for when you're going side by side. So in the race that's going to be a problem. As we saw on board with James, a great clean lap. And I think he just said a 45.9, so the fastest lap of the season.
And it wasn't a bad lap to pick to set an onboard lap. I'll let Chris get his breath back for a second, because that was a fantastically talked around lap. But of course, at the same time, I fear he's possibly exhausted himself just watching James Murphy go that quick. And I think who can blame him when he's gone to a 45.9? We talk about a low 46 as a superb lap. I think a 45.9, that's going to possibly be, particularly if we've only got, 10 seconds left to go with anyone else on a fast lap here, possibly impossible to beat, I think. Even though Blair McConaughey is pushing hard here, he's still half a second off in 6th position. So James Murphy decided to go straight to the pits, and is now more than a tenth and a half ahead of Guy Crawford in 2nd place. Richard Gallagher still 3rd. Now Tom McEwing's put in a nice lap there to go 7th. So Tom McEwing, who's one of this year's 2021 Caterham Academy racers, who will be in action within the next few weeks for the first time at Aintree for their competitive sprint, if I'm correct. He'll be in action at that one. He's up in 7th position. And the rest of the field heading around, and some other drivers who I expect to be a little bit higher. But again, we talked about the height of the skill level here for many of these drivers really has just grown and grown over the last few races. Like Christian Zaruta back in 11th place on his run, as well as David Rowe, who hasn't had virtually no practice time at all, in 15th spot. So got some work to do, but he is usually someone who can race pretty well and work his way through. And not that I wish for it to happen, but there is usually some kind of shenanigans, big or small, in the first lap, which means he may well benefit by picking up at least a couple of places, provided he can keep his nose out of it, even though he is starting towards the rear and effectively in what could be the thick of things. Then we've got a few more cars just heading round to finish their final hot laps. Steve Arnell here in 13th place, just making his way into that name row corner. It's a blind entry where you go over the crest, braking in. It's blind entry to try and find your apex. The apex can even be a late one, depending on how you turn in. Try and pick up as much speed on the exit. But across the line goes Steve Arnell, and he stays 13th. Yeah, he doesn't improve. He's going to head back to the pits 3/4 of a second off the pole position time as he heads back to the pit lane. Will Rossetti will come across to try and beat what should have been 8th position, but he comes across the line and can't do it either. So, the final 25 minutes of racing awaits, and this is how they will line up for the caterhamracer.com America's Road Trip Grand Final. James Murphy, with what was already a great lap in qualifying, goes even quicker to be the only man to dip below 146 in the qualifying session. 145.931 to put him just over a tenth and a half ahead of Guy Crawford, who will start alongside him on the front row of the grid. There's Richard Gallagher and Andy Parker, two of the big improvers throughout this season. They'll start on the second row of the grid and will certainly be ones to watch to at least get themselves onto the podium. Then it's Steve McMaster and Blair McConaughey. Steve McMaster, a former caterhamracer.com champion. He will start from the third row alongside Blair McConaughey, the ever-fast Scot. Then it's Tom McEwing with an excellent lap to put himself 7th, and Will Rossetti in 8th, ahead of James Fowler and Mark Bennett to complete the top 10. It's the second half of the field now, and it's Christian Zaruta back in 11th with work to do, but he's usually quite quick in terms of racing his way through the pack when the opportunity arises. Alistair Gregg has done well. He was one of the drivers who, I think he picked up a race win, if I'm correct. In one, I think it was Road America he did. So he started back at 12th. Steve Arnell, who managed to get through thanks to the generosity of Anthony Cook. He starts 13th. Chris Skithercorn back in 14th. And David Rowe, another one to watch for, back in 15th. But you can guarantee with his decent race pace, usually at most races, he will not stay there for long. At least I hope he doesn't. And then Paul Fernhoff, Jason Knight and John Lang. Jason Knight and John Lang being two of our newcomers this season, and certainly have been getting quicker and quicker with each lap they drive on the servers. They'll start towards the back of the grid. But again, if circumstances go their way, I do not expect them to stay there. So the cars now begin to form up on the grid. There is this waiting period here when everyone's just hunkering down and just making sure that they're sort of sat nicely positioned in their sim racing rigs and make sure that they're all in position, all the settings they need to get themselves off the line perfectly are in place. It's playing devil's advocate playing this question, ask this question, Chris, and I suspect there isn't a clear answer, but is there anyone that's even remotely a clear favourite or a possibility that's going to be a runaway victor? James Murphy, of course, set a fantastic lap in qualifying, but as we've seen time and time again, being fast in qualifying doesn't mean much if you can't back it up in the race. And while James regularly can, this is the most competitive field we've ever had. So in terms of how close they are in terms of pace, so this could be tricky.
Yeah, it all comes down to these opening few corners and see whether there's any kind of break in the traffic. If the pack behind goes side by side and James has got that lead, we've seen it so many times before, he will run away with it. He doesn't make those mistakes. So yeah, it's hard to bet against him, but it will all depend on these opening laps.
Well, we're about to find our fourth ever champion in caterhamracer.com, but who's it going to be? The grand final of the America's Road Trip for caterhamracer.com is all set to get underway here at Mont Tremblant. The lights go out and it is underway here in Canada. It is a fantastic start from pole from James Murphy's to head up towards that very fast but tricky right-hander for turn one. It's side by side for third place between, looks to be Andy Parker and Richard Gallagher as they head up through the right-hander. Also getting involved there is Blair McConaughey. He's up to fifth past Steve McMaster as they head up through the right-hander and into the S's for the first time. Murphy's trying to make a clean break here as they still go side by side for fourth position. Up through the S's once again. They look as though they've got through at the moment relatively cleanly. Couple of positions swapping around, and David Rowe has been trying to make a couple of places already, but he's down to 15th, battling for Chris Skillicorn. Now up towards the right-hander to the middle of the first lap here as they turn their way through, and it looks as though as they come towards the bottom end of the circuit, up towards turn 8, then the back straight onto the hump at turn 9. That could be your crucial point. We see here that Clyde Crawford already under attack from Richard Gallagher and Andy Parker as they turn onto the back straight now and over the crest of the hump, and there's contact in the background. One or two cars involved. One I think is Mark Bennett tumbling down by the time of screen. The other one I think unfortunately is Christian Zaruta. He's towards the back and he's unfortunately looks as though, unless we see a minor miracle, possibly his chance of winning the grand final here have unfortunately gone up in smoke. He's at the back of the field. But now we head into the right-hander here at the 10 and the left-hander of the Gulch at 11. Up the hill into Bridge Turn at 12. The Kink at 13. And more tussling going on for 4th, 5th and 6th behind the race leaders. And that's their ever-crucial name row hairpin. It's an uphill approach, blind entry and apex. It's a late run as you come through the corner to get yourself back towards the left-hander onto the pit straight up past the control tower at the end of lap number 1. So it looks as though they seem to be all getting through for the most part cleanly on this first lap. Apart from a little skirmish at the back, Chris, everyone appears to have got through relatively unscathed. Murphy already almost a second to the good in the lead here and exerting his authority early doors. Yeah,
it does look like there's almost a dangerous gap there, but it looks like the following three cars here have settled down as we see Guy Crawford running a little bit wide there, which isn't going to help. The contact in the midfield was someone made side-by-side contact and actually waited for the other person to get in front. I think that was Mark Bennett, but unfortunately that all concertinaed everyone up and there was then an incident further back. But yeah, the current story of this race is whether Guy Crawford can close that gap, but it looks like Richard Gallagher's the one that wants to get past and chasing after James Murphy.
I think sort of the crucial here is that whether or not he can make that move and start chasing after him. Gallagher looking very racy indeed to get past Crawford. He's having a possible look up the inside and peek into the mirror of Crawford as he heads into turn 8. It's a double apex right-hander that opens out on the exit as he goes up the hill now. And of course all three of them in a tow. There's a big battle going on behind me. So Steve McMaster was having a scrap with Tom McEwing and James Fowler as they head up the hill now. Tom McEwing's got through and so has Fowler with the greater momentum up the hill through the hump, through the left-handed kink. of turn 9, and now this long sprint towards turns 10 and 11 when you punch it down 2 gears and then hug the first apex to set the car up for the left-hander of the Gulch at turn 11. And we're winding their way through. Just ahead of them, we've got Will Rossetti battling with Blair McConaughey. Up the hill further under the bridge. That reminds you of the left-hander at Road America out of turn 5. When they come up through the hill, up through this very hilly, very undulating course. Another very tricky name row hairpin of turn 14 where you can lock brakes, and as we saw on the onboard lap, and Chris very ably described, of course, it can be literally a couple of millimetres difference in braking can mean either going straight on and going wide or hitting the apex just perfectly. So it's all crucial here to make it happen. The gap now in the lead is rather concerning for everyone else. 1.2 seconds gap between James Murphy in the lead and Guy Crawford in second place. And you get the feeling, Chris, like you said, that Richard Gallagher and also maybe Andrew Parker here, they really feel as if they're trying to get Guy Crawford out of the way, although I don't think that was how he intended that to happen. And sadly, Chris, Guy Crawford's chances, which could have been fairly decent, have now gone to absolute zero. And I'm afraid, while Richard Gallagher may not have intended to make that contact, it hasn't really happened.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looked like Richard Gallagher there did make contact with the rear of Guy and spun him around. And we've also seen that he has waited for him to rejoin, and that's why we've seen Richard Gallagher also drop down the order. But that does now leave 3-second lead for James Murphy as Andrew Parker takes up the chase down. Can that gap be reduced? I'm not sure. We've currently lost Scott from the commentary box, so we'll wait for him to rejoin us. But it looks like there's a really good battle just behind, so we will, even if James is breaking away at the front there, we've got Will Rossetti here, absolutely side by side with James Fowler, going side by side through turn 8 and 9, and say now looks like Tom McEwing wants to get involved as we're coming up to Bridge Bend, that really tricky left-hander where the car goes light over the crest and the rear end wants to step out on you all the time. So yeah, even though Andrew Parker looks like he's got a lot of work to do, we won't count that out yet. We'll just keep an eye on that as we're going through. And I can see that Scott's joined us back in the box again.
Yeah, I think my just got a bit of a tantrum, but we'll ignore that for a second. I'm back in action to see continue to unfold here. Blair McConaughey looks as though he's managed to pull a decent gap now to the car behind. So looks as though he's left everyone else to scrap the best of the rest in 4th position downwards, even though that Rossetti's trying to keep a close eye on trying to keep up with and possibly get past Andy Parker if he can. Now we see here Steve McMaster scrapping away with Alistair Gregg. He's now squeezed his way up to 7th place. McMaster tries to hang it out around the outside and to the inside line for the second part of the S, which will now give him a chance to possibly make that reclaim that move back again, and also trying to sweep around the outside. Looks to be Chris Skillicorn in the black car with the red and green striping down the middle. This is the scrap that's going on for 7th, 8th and 9th as they turn their way through turn 8 and onto this turn 7, now onto turn 8, this big braking zone where you've got this double apex. Seen here down the back straight and under the brakes again, and just peeking out to have another look. He's forced to make a mistake as he locks up. Tries to get the second apex quickly enough in front of them. In fact, I can see it looks like that is Rossetti and Fowler going side by side for 4th place. Rossetti has got through, but Fowler was right underneath his roll cage as they come up the hill, now towards the right-hander of 10 and the Gulch of 11. And they are side by side. Something's got to give here in this fast right-hander. Someone's got to blink first. Who's it going to be? It might possibly be. I thought it was going to be a Fowler, but it's not. They have gone side by side, and they're still wheel to wheel as they come through the left hand of this part of the S's up the hill, and they are still side by side. And incredibly, it looks as though I think Fowler's won that one out, but it's only brought Tom McEwing into play as well. A little twitch of oversteer from Will Rossetti as he put the pound down Hexton Bridge corner. Now as they come up towards the turn 14 of Name Road, big dive up the inside from Rossetti to make it stick, and he was very impressive to make that move, not only to make the move up the inside, but to also park it on the apex, to hold on to the position, Chris, and force not only James Fowler to think again, but also backing him up further into Tom McEwing. He's having a fantastic race so far, up in as high as 6th position. Yeah,
if I was going to put money down, I would have said he was 100% going to run wide, but he didn't. He managed to stop it all up, but if you saw on the screen behind him, Chris Skillicorn didn't manage to stop it up, so that's why he's dropped back down now to 10th place there. With Rossetti runs wide, so after all that hard work, he's now run wide into the S's, so it gives them all the chance just to keep back with him. He just doesn't seem to want to lose this battle, does he? He's having so much fun.
Whilst this battle's going on, just quickly noting the lead gap, it's now up to 4.1 seconds. So it looks as though I think Murphy, touch wood, appears to be checking out already in these early stages, leaving everyone else to scrap over 2nd and 3rd place downwards onto the podium and then be best of the rest in 4th. the moment. Rossetti has that one, but Tom McEwing has a look up the inside, but he has his avenue blocked by James Fowler as they came down towards turn 8 into the braking zone, and they lock wheels, and Fowler just about got away with that one, but he might be able to still pull alongside as they come up the hill now for 4th place. We've been here before, haven't we? Because they did this a lap ago. And Fowler's going to try and get himself on the inside line this time, and now everyone, they've swept lines now. It's Rossetti this time on the outside, but is he brave enough to sweep around and hold on to position? He's going to try it, and he's forced Fowler to back out of it to put himself back into Tom McEwing. Has he gone too deep? The answer is not quite. I thought it might kill his momentum, but it hasn't quite done that just yet. And now we see Alistair Gregg, who's also latched himself onto the tail here. So it's now 4 cars battling over 4th position. Rossetti from Fowler, from McEwing, and then from Gregg as they come up towards turn 14 again. It's very crucial braking, so whether or not anyone's going to try and make a dive. And here comes James Fowler making a move into the neighbourhood. Will he go too deep? The answer is I think he has. A bit of a big skirmish on the exit. They're all going to try and sort themselves out. Incredible, Rossetti still stays in front, but the main beneficiary appears to be Tom McEwing. He's up on alongside. That's James Fowler with Alistair Gregg in the mix as well. James Murphy sets the new fastest lap of the race, but the gap is still 4.2 seconds. But this trap rages on as Rossetti starts to check out in 4th position. Running wide there is James Fowler. He's now just let Alistair Gregg through back into 7th, 6th position. So incredibly, that all started, that entire downfall of James Fowler was entirely his making, because he made a big dive up the inside to get past Will Rossetti. Didn't make it work. Everyone all checked up behind him, and now he's found himself shuffled back down to 7th place. And if he's not careful, Chris, it could be 8th, but then lurking Steve McMaster behind. They go 3 abreast into turn 7. I was trying to give us a moment there, but every time I try to break across to you, Chris, things keep happening. So it's incredible stuff. This battle for 4th, but he's now 5th position. Tom McEwing at the head of it, but everyone else behind. He's desperate to get past him. He's up the inside, and that's the Gregg. And then goes Tom Fowler around the outside. There's a big bit of contact. Somehow, Chris, both McEwing and Fowler, despite the contact, had massive tank slappers at the double apex of turn 8 and still came out of it pointed the right way.
I'm not sure they didn't just when you change down gears too quickly in those pressure situations, the rears can lock, and I'm not sure that there wasn't involved in that. But certainly Alistair Gregg is making some great progress up from where he qualified up to 5th place already, showing the quality of his racing is right up there. And as everyone else has been losing their head slightly, he's managed to hold it. And so's David Rowe. David Rowe now up to 7th place from where he qualified on the grid. That's a great movement up through the field there. So yeah, it's been a bit topsy-turvy. As you say, it hasn't really let up at all. The only battle that's sort of gone a bit stale is James Murphy out there in the lead, with Parker sort of still in his battle with McConaughey here. McConaughey's did some great pre-season or pre-event practice, so I'm wondering whether he can catch up and give us a battle for 2nd place. But at the moment, with 4.6 second lead, it looks like James Murphy is just carrying on in his imperious way.
Well, James Murphy is as James Murphy does, and this is certainly a typical James Murphy. When he gets tight into the end of a race, usually there's not that much to stop him, unless it's usually if he's got some quite equal competition. He can be put under some pressure in real life, and he has done in sim before, but maybe the likes of Cherney and Jensen Hassler, who have done so in previous times, whilst they're not here to try and stop him, if they had been, maybe it could have been a different story. But it is what it is, and what it is James Murphy almost 5 seconds ahead now of Andy Parker as he holds up for 2nd place. Now Andy, I think, even if it is 2nd place, I don't want to say just or only 2nd place. What is happening, although we see Tom McEwing running wide at the exit of turn 6, and put under massive pressure from David Rose trying to dive up the inside. But whilst that's happening, I'll finish my point quickly, which is I think Andy Parker will still be very pleased with 2nd place, Chris, because he's been working so hard, and not to jinx it into Touchwood, I think he'll still have had to put in a fantastic result wherever he finishes, but to get the 2nd place potentially, that'll be a fantastic way for him to crown what's been a very up and down few weeks of racing when he's been the nearly man in qualifying before making a mistake. He got through in the last chance saloon. To get 2nd place for him after all the hard work he's done with Darren Burke, it's not over. He hasn't got it yet, but if he does get it, that'll be a fantastic just reward for all the effort he's put in to improve so much over the last few weeks.
100% we have just jinxed that for him. We have seen him make several mistakes all on his own, and that has been his biggest enemy this whole season. Has been his own mistakes and lack of concentration or trying to close down, but we have seen some great pace, and yes, it would be an absolutely well-deserved 2nd place there. McConaughey not taken part in too many of our races, and so he's great to be up there in 3rd place. And Rossetti, we often also see Rossetti falling back down through the field, so the fact that he's now still in a solid 4th place, we see McEwing get so close to David Rowe as they go over that brow of the hill into these opening really fast corners. Let's see whether they can all get it stopped up for the S's, which they do. But yeah, so far, great stuff from Andrew Parker. Like you say, it's good to see him up there. And yes, as long as he can not be his own enemy and we haven't jinxed him too much.
I'm sure he'll have gone through all of that, all the mental tactics with Darren Burke to kind of make sure that he just keeps it on the road and is able to drive his own race and not worry about too much about the cars behind him. He hasn't got to worry about the quality too much, as it's 1.4 seconds is the gap, but he's just maintaining it nicely at the front in second place and doing everything he needs to secure a podium spot. I think the only thing he would wish is that he was a bit closer to James Murphy in terms of pace, but it is what it is and where he is at the moment. Now looking for the switchback on the exit impressively is Tom McEwen. That was a beautifully executed switchback on through turn 8. He really did sell David Rowe a dummy. This is a race winner here, and the DPR team boss. Might be an audition for post-academy racing in real life here for a second, because Tom McEwen is really giving it some to David Rowe. This has also brought Steve McMaster into play here. Chris Skillicorn's watching on, as is James Fowler, as now it's David Rowe sending it round the outside at turn 10. He's got the apex for turn 11, but Tom McEwen is not going to give it up easy. He is really braving it out around the outside for the next corner, and again up into bridge turn, diving up now to take the place of Steve McMaster. They almost locked wheels again. Steve McMaster had to back out of it a little bit. He didn't want to make too much contact and possibly put everyone else behind him at risk, mainly Chris Skillicorn and James Fowler, as they all dive up towards name road as one. Who's going to outbrake themselves? They've almost to get through just fine. Look at that. Look at James Fowler sneaking up the inside over the curb. They're going to be 3 abreast to him, a left hand on the final turn up onto the pit straight through turn 15. So somehow David Rowe's come through in 6th, it's 5th place, 6th place, 7th place for Tom McEwen, 8th for James Fowler, 9th for Chris Skillicorn, and 10th for 10th for Chris Skillicorn, excuse me, 9th for Fowler, 10th for Skillicorn. I thought there was going to be a big shuffle up at the hairpin, but James Fowler tried to be sneaky up the inside, didn't quite pull it off. He has made up 1 position though. He's got past Chris Skillicorn up into 9th position. But David Rowe's having to hold back the tide here. But some sensational stuff from Tom McEwen. You'd never think he was an academy racer for this year, making his first year of real life racing. But in the sim, all the improvement he's made, one of the big improvers so far, taking it to a race winner and championship contender like David Rowe, like he is now at turn 6, trying to make it up the inside here. This is phenomenal stuff from Tom, from an academy driver. Hasn't even done his first competitive start in real life yet.
Yeah, it's quite daunting, isn't it? It's like how much you can get out of the simulator world, and as you say, David Rowe is a seasoned competitor, so he knows what he's doing. He hasn't had quite the same practice coming into this, but he's undeniable pace that he has got. These 4 or 5 up into the hairpin on the last time. They pretty much the top 3 all missed their braking point and drifted slightly wide, and that's why we was with David Rowe so close on the rail. He's going around the inside now, so we've seen this several laps in a row where this side-by-side move just doesn't end. It's the move that carries on, and McMaster there sort of shoving his nose in, and Fowler as well. So they all want to be in front, don't they?
It's incredible stuff. They all want to be where Tom McEwen is right now, and they're all trying to do it at the same time. And look who's also crept onto the back, Steve Arnell. This is the typical Caterham scenario where you get a pack of cars battling, and the more they battle, more and more cars latch onto the back of it, and the group becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. There's contact. That James Fowler made a big move up the inside. He's clattered into the side of Steve McMaster, getting through his both Chris Skillicorn, and I think also Steve Arnell. Yes, he has. So Steve is now up into 9th position at the expense of Fowler. Master's been shuffled back down to 11th. Jason Knight's in the mix as well now in 12th position. He's up the inside of McMaster. Remember, he was one of the champions from our seasons back in season 2. All the way back in 11th spot, battling away with Jason Knight in 12th. Fantastic stuff by the mid-pack here. Very competitive stuff. Gives me a lot of confidence for season 5, where we've got, hopefully, if it's following the more traditional occasional calendar, because if it is, I think if we get most of these guys in for the full season, Chris, I'm pretty confident we're going to get a pretty competitive season where lots of drivers are going to be battling over points finishes. I think the table could be very varied and very, very topsy-turvy given what we've had in previous times.
Yeah, points would add a whole different dimension again back into our season. So we haven't been running with points for a little while, but it certainly adds that little bit of extra competitive spirit over that season. Hopefully the Caterham calendar itself will settle down so we can actually get our season planned. As Arnell there drifting a little bit wide, it didn't make contact there, but someone did get fired off. It was James Fowler actually fired himself off there into the grass, maybe locked up and just outbraked himself. It looks like it's settled down. That's back down to McEwen and David Rowe fighting it out, and this is how it all started before, so they've got a little bit of a gap, but as soon as they start going side by side like this, we are going to see Chris Skillicorn and the bunch behind catch them right back up again.
They're at it again, these two for 6th and 7th place. Rowe and McEwen in their own little private battle now, with Skillicorn trying to give chase, as you mentioned. David Rowe now, as he heads his way up through bridge turn, this very tricky uphill left-hander with the apex right at the tip of the crest. Now they come back towards name row, another very tricky corner here where McEwen's going to try and line him up when he make a dive. It's this right-hander, and Rowe's gone a little bit too deep. He has gone way too deep into the corner. He's been put under pressure a little bit too much by Tom McEwen. That was great driving there from Tom to just make David Rowe crack under the pressure there. Forced him into a mistake, and now Rowe's going to do it all over again to repass him as they come up through the right hand of turn 1 here, as he just undulates on this long, almost never-ending right-hander over the crest, back down the other side again, and then back towards the S's here, where you just hug the first apex and set the car up for the second part. You see here, McEwen not letting David Rowe have an inch here at all. Not an inch of space or opportunity. It's just bringing Chris Skithercorn and McMaster back into play, who somehow shuffled his way back up into what was now 9th place, when he was about 11th or 12th. He was almost under threat from Jason Knight, but he's benefited from a couple of clean corners to get himself back into a top 10 position. We're riding on board with Steve now. He's almost got a prime spot here watching these two in front. This is the battle he's watching in front between the 3 cars scrapping over 6th position. He's got on his tail Steve Varnell in the almost it's the yellow, almost like sort of mosaic liveried, sort of abstract mosaic liveried car to come up the hill. Rest of the pack just works its way through turn 7 and up towards the turn 8, through the hump of turn 9 and back towards that very fast S section of 10 and 11. And that line of the 3 cars battling over 6 looks pretty tense, as it does here, with McMaster and Arnell scrapping over 9th and 10th, the final 2 top 10 spots. And now they head back up into Bridge Turn. 5.5 minutes to go. Time flies when you're having fun here. We've even had almost 20 minutes of racing in this 25-minute final. Just for the record, James Murphy has now an almost 7-second lead. It was 7 seconds at one point on the screen. 7-second lead over Andy Parker in 2nd place, with Blair McConaughey back in 3rd. Then Rossetti, Alistair Gregg rounding out the top 5. And this is the main battle we're watching here for 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th between Tom McEwen in P6, David Rowe in P7, then Chris Skithercorn, Steve McMaster and Steve Arnell rounding out the top 10. There is Guy Crawford recovering in 11th place after he hit trouble early on, after he had the spin up at the S, after he got a little bit of a nudge from, if I'm correct, it was Richard Gallagher who nudged him. So Richard, for the record, is back in 13th place. I suspect that Richard, on purpose and out of courtesy, waited for Guy to come back through again just to let him have the position back, because he realised he'd made contact and didn't want to just let it run away with it and risk a penalty. So that was gracious of Richard to ultimately sacrifice his own race, because he had sort of compromised someone else's unintentionally. But Guy then in 11th place on the verge of a top 10, not too far away from this battle for 9th, as I think that was Steve McMaster who ran wide on the exit turn 7. And now as they sprint down towards the hairpin here, we've got Richard Gallagher battling away with Jason Knight and Mark Bennett in the blue car, number 44, as they turn into the right hand, this double apex turn 8. And Bennett's got through. He's very close off the back of Richard Gallagher, almost nibbling at the rear panel of the white Caterham as they come up through the hump of turn 9, over the crest and back towards 10 and 11 with 4 minutes to go. And Bennett's going to try and line him up here for a pass on the inside line, but they switch positions, and now it's Bennett on the inside for the right-hander, and Gallagher just about lets him have it. He just says, after you, Mark, and through he goes. Rock over the curbs here through turn 10, using all of it and a little bit more. And now as they come up the hill, you see John Lang and the recovering James Fowler, who's had that mishap after he ran wide at turn 8. He's towards the back, but he's certainly trying to make the most of what he can. And also, for the record, we see Christian Zaruta, who has not featured in this race at all, hasn't really had a great grand final at all. He's 3 seconds back, just in the rear of shot you saw for a moment there, but maybe not the final he was hoping for, Chris.
Christian Shooter moved house recently, and he's currently working on a sort of temporary simulator setup, so he's at least got a little bit of an excuse there. It's not his normal setup, and I think he's got a monitor sat on a board that's sat between 2 bedside cabinets, for example, so it's not an ideal setup. But yeah, I just wanted to show that there were battles all the way down this field from that 6th place all the way back down to the end. They're all covered on that same straight. It's pretty incredible stuff. And while James Murphy's making it a bit of a boring event out front, and more congratulations to him, everyone else is having a ride old ball.
It is a race befitting of a grand final, particularly all the battles we're seeing here for positions. I think for many of these people, I don't think they really care that it's for 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th or 10th positions. They're just enjoying themselves in a fantastic scrap in the mid-pack here for positions to just have some fun and be right in the thick of things here. Now what's intriguing is that Tom McEwen's 6th, but Chris Skithercorn's moved up to 7th now, so whilst we're watching those battles behind, there's been a bit of a shuffle around. David Rowe's been pushed back to 7th, back to 8th now, behind Chris Skithercorn. Tom McEwen is 6th. As we said, Alistair Gregg is now on his own 9th position, 4 seconds ahead of this battle. So he's pulled away after he managed to work his way up through these ranks, and now just on the verge of the top 5 in 6th position, having a great run on his own. But here we see Steve McMaster with a big sideways moment. I'm not sure if there was a tag there from Guy Crawford or not. Whether there was, either way, he had to really sort of really fight for control of the car on the exit of the Gulch as they come up over the crest towards Name Row. This is now with 1 minute and 45 on the clock, and now we see McMaster sort of trying to dive up the outside here to hold on to the position of Steve Arnell, but Arnell hangs him out to dry, and he'll try and get him back on the left-hander, back onto the pit straight, but it's not going to be quite enough to squeeze past. They come down the pit straight again to complete another lap.
It almost looked like David Rowe was a bit of a cork in the bottle, wasn't he? He was at the front of this pack, but looking like everyone was angrily chasing behind him. And now that they've got through, we've seen that McEwing and Skillicorn have actually got a little bit of air gap, and it looks like it's going to be Crawford recovering back through the field that's now next to put pressure on David Rowe.
Well, see that if possibly Guy Crawford can make a move here with the small amount of time we've got left, I think possibly there might be time for one more lap, knowing how far that James Murphy is ahead, about 7.5 seconds, and these guys are a further. In fact, yes, I think there will be one more lap. I think, yes, there will just about be time for one more to squeeze in. But we haven't really talked about him too much because he's just been out in front, spread eagling the field and enjoying his own race, and enjoying his own company at the front of the field. James, as we said earlier on, James Murphy is as James Murphy does, and what he does do better than anyone else, it seems, is grab a gap and pull away. Up over the crest he goes into Bridge Turn, and now he'll come towards Name Row. I think he'll cross the line with about roughly 10 seconds or so left to go, so he will have one more time around the magnificent circuit Mont Tremblant that has offered itself some fantastic racing all the way through this this grand final evening. Up through the left-hander. And he's got one more time around this circuit now to try and make this happen. Back to the scrap for 6th with Tom McEwing, who is pulling away from Chris Skiller. Or is he pulling away from Chris Skiller? If you want to look at the gap, that's about a second. And there's been a change again because David Rowe has lost out to Guy Crawford. He's going to try and get him back as he tries to get down the outside and break that a little bit later to pull level with Guy. Behind them, Steve Arnell's having that scrap that's still ongoing with Steve McMaster. That is over 10th and 11th spots to come up through the final corner to start the last lap of the race. This is crunch time now for some of these drivers, Chris. If they're going to make a move, they're going to make it now, or otherwise forever hold their peace.
Absolutely, and they will know now. It'll say final lap on their screen as it does on ours to let them know that they are now into that final lap, as we see David Rowe so close at the back of Guy Crawford there. Skillicorn is definitely in target as long as Guy doesn't make any more mistakes, but it does look like Tom McEwing might have a comfortable gap there, so it kind of starting to settle down, but anything could happen. There's still 6 corners left.
Settling down the Caterham race, you must be joking, Chris. It never happens. But even so, these guys are still going to keep on battling right to the very end as they come up towards turn 8. And in these closing stages on this final lap, anyone could possibly try and line themselves up for a move. In fact, these 4 possibly could. Constantine are up together pretty close to make it happen. But meanwhile, back at the front, and again, we have to give a sort of sincere apology to James, because whilst we haven't really talked about him too much, it's kind of been for good reason, because one, he's been so far out in the lead, there's not been much to talk about other than the fact that he's leading, but the second time also there's been so much going on behind him. That's where the action's been. But there's a reason why he's been a double Caterham champion in real life, and he's certainly going to try and make it up here once again. But he comes out the final couple of the corners. He is driven like the champion, and he will do it once again out of the final corner onto the pit straight. James Murphy is the champion of the America's Road Trip for caterhamracer.com. A big congratulations to James and a very well-deserved win. Second, what a way to cap an up and down America's Road Trip for Andy Parker. Third for Blaine McConaughey on the podium, and fourth for Will Rossetti. Fifth for Alistair Gregg, a great drive for him through the pack to make it to be in his own 5th position. Now for 6th down, what happened? It was Skillicorn 6th. No, sorry, it was McEwing 6th, Skillicorn 7th, Rowe was 8th, Crawford 9th, McMaster 10th, and Arnell's 11th, 12th is Richard Gallagher, 13th Mark Bennett, and then John Lang, Jason Knight, Christian Zaruta, and then James Fowler, who was at the back of the drivers that finished the race. The only car we didn't get finished the race who pissed early on was Paul Fernhoff, unfortunately. But as everyone decides to do the typical sim racing thing and just crash into each other at the end because the season's over, we can now reflect on what has been an incredible 6 races, which it has finally brought us a champion. And after what has simply been, well, there's another word for it, a dominant drive in typical fashion, James Murphy is the America's Road Trip champion for season 4 of caterhamracer.com action after a fantastic race in the grand final to win by more than 7.5 seconds. What a fantastic performance. Andy Parker, well, Andrew's been up and down, but he's been one of the arguably the most improved driver out of anyone in the field. And to cap it off, what has been some races with some very bad luck, some great pace nonetheless, to qualify in Laguna Seca, and to finally have it all come good with an excellent second place. He's got to be thrilled with that. I don't think he'd even care he didn't win. Second for him is his best result ever, I think, in terms of, particularly in the grand final here. He will certainly love that more than anything else. Blair McConaughey also should be thrilled with his podium finish in the final. He can be pleased, I'm sure, with a bronze medal after what's been a very hard-fought campaign after he qualified fairly early on. Will Rossetti managed to pick up fourth after he was chasing Blair McConaughey for most of that race. Alistair Gregg worked his way through the pack to get himself into a very lonely fifth position, but one that was certainly well-deserved. Tom McEwing managed to break away from everyone else in the pack behind to pick up sixth. He'll be one to watch out for, I'm sure, in real life in the Caterham Academy this year. Chris Skillicorn was seventh. David Rowe, despite not getting that much practice, managed to pick up eighth, after even though he started deep in the field at about 15th place. Ninth for Guy Crawford. It could have been higher for him, but he got spun out of the race early on by Richard Gallagher and fought his way back into the top 10. Steve McMaster, former champion, showing how competitive it really has become in the last couple of seasons, could only manage 10th after all his shenanigans. 11th for Steve Arnell. He did well starting towards the back of the field. Then Richard Gallagher 12th, Mark Bennett 13th, John Lang 14th, Jason Knight 15th. The Christian Zaruta with a rudimentary setup can only manage 16th place after he was compromised early on, getting caught up in a first lap incident at turn 8. And James Fowler was up and around the top 10, but after a couple of mistakes, he slips down to the final finisher on the road. And Paul Fernhouse, sadly, he retired after just 5 laps with some kind of an issue, whether it was mechanical or damage or otherwise. So that is another season complete. And Chris, what an incredible final that we had to round things off. Some amazing action in typical caterhamracer.com style. Some incredible battles between so many brilliant and much improved drivers up and down the field. It just shows how competitive it really is, not just in real life, but in the sim as well. But ultimately, as to Connie's nickname, there's no stopping Superman. He's done it again. Another brilliant championship, another brilliant series win for James Murphy. And you can't say anything else other than his performance made sure he utterly deserved it.
Yeah, what a worthy champion, really. I mean, just proved, while everyone else was faffing around behind, he just sort of took that opportunity and just never looked back. And that 7-second gap is it's pretty incredible over a field of that quality. Somewhat, a wasted opportunity from the group chasing behind, in that if they'd organised themselves a little bit better early doors, I think they would have had a little bit more of a challenge. And that sort of contact between Gallagher and Guy Crawford just sort of upset the front of the race, and that's where James really put the pedals to the metal and disappeared off. But yeah, some really great performances, and Andrew Parker there doing what he hasn't done for the rest of the season and remaining consistent in that second place. No mistakes, and absolutely took a well-deserved second place. And McConaughey there, always a strong racer, and showing that he's not lost any of that recently.
Yeah, and outside the top 3, we look at some of the drivers that were put in. We have Will Rossetti in 4th position, who's always been getting improving. Alistair Gregg, and what I think is only his second race with us, after he qualified through one of the heats, to go through and pick up a top 5, and to do it by creating the gap that he did, by picking his way through the pack from a lower grid spot that he had, and managing to make the gap and just give himself that cushion of a few seconds behind him, certainly paid dividends to give himself a top 5. And then we have the almighty scrap behind for 6th position. We had Tom McEwen coming on top of that, which is brilliant. But at one point, Steve McMaster had it. And at another point, David Rowe had it. Another point, Steve Arnell was in the mix. James Fowler was in there as well. There was so much going on in the mid-pack. It was one of the most entertaining parts of the race to watch those 5 or 6 cars in those mid-pack spots just battling out back and forth and go side by side for so many corners. I mean, I think this just shows that, again, we keep saying it over and over, but we really do mean it. Drivers like Tom McEwen, and we can include Andy Parker in that, Alistair Gregg in there as well, James Fowler, who's been getting quicker, other guys in the mix there who are going up against established names like David Rowe and Steve McMaster, who were having to work at, we can throw Christian Zaruta in there as well, and we've said it time and time again, having to work harder than they have done before in previous seasons, because they realise drivers are getting into the service and they're just putting in the work, putting in lap after lap after lap to go quicker and quicker. And to see the progression of drivers like Tom and Andrew and everyone else that's come up and made improvements this year is not only great for us in terms of the race spectacle, but it's great for everyone else out on track, because it means it's not just the same few cars at the front. There is potential now for other drivers to get up in there and to be a factor, to mix it up and to really be unpredictable factors in races where you look at the entry list and think, well, there's typically about 4 or 5 drivers you'd expect to be in the mix, but it turns out being at least about a dozen that could be up there and at least get themselves a podium or a strong top 5. It really is possible to see more and more cars up at the front. Qualifying proved it, and that mid-pack battles from 6th downwards certainly proved evidence as well.
Yeah, it's down to those tenths of a second, and that's what it should be, you know. But Alistair Gregg proving that even if you don't have that ultimate pace on the single lap qualifying, you know, with some racecraft and wiliness, you can make your way through. He kind of did what we would normally see Christian Sharita doing, but he didn't manage that tonight on his Bespoke simulator. But it was great to see. It was great to see all that, and certainly the battle behind was the place to watch, and that's why we concentrated there.
Well, I think we've given analysis enough. I think it's time we actually heard from the men that we've been talking about all evening and all season, and heap some praise onto them directly, and that being our top 3 from the race, maybe even some other relevant drivers who've had some fantastic efforts throughout the season. But I think also we need to have a chat to our top 3, and I'm sure Chris also, most importantly, we need to speak to our America's Road Trip champion, James Murphy, who drove like the champion that he is, and put in a fantastic performance. So again, with your best Martin Brundle trousers, or whatever to call them, wander up down the pit lane one last time this season. Let's see who we can find. I'm sure we've got our top 3 around, including our very worthy champion James Murphy. So for the last time, off you go, and let's see who we can find.
In true racing form, we'll do it in reverse order, and we'll leave James for last. But we've got Blair McConaughey. Blair, are you in the commentary box with us?
Yes, how are you doing, Susie?
Well, very good. So your race, it seemed to sort of early doors where you kind of snuck through the field and managed to sort of stick into that third after the incidents happened just ahead of you.
Yeah, there was definitely an element of luck there. I couldn't believe it when the kind of seas parted in front of me, but you got to take your chances. I was hoping to maybe be slightly higher up in qualifying, so it was nice to just make the way through the pack with a little bit of luck.
Yeah, and congratulations, you held on to it sort of from mid-race onwards. There wasn't too much of a challenge, although I think you were catching Andrew at the end there.
We were just talking about that, actually. I think we were toing and froing. I think maybe in the first third of the race there was maybe a 0.6, 0.7 gap, and it would go up or down by a couple of tenths here or there. He would make a mistake, I would make a mistake. It just kind of game of tennis back and forth. And yeah, towards the end it was the same story. But I didn't quite realise that Will was sneaking up on me. I wasn't really paying attention. I was trying to catch up with Andrew, and then all of a sudden I saw Will dominating my rearview mirror.
He was only, I think, just maybe a second behind at the end there. Wasn't from he definitely pulled a lot. He had a lot of speed there.
He was definitely adding on the pressure, and it's probably a feeling I'll get in the coming season as we both battle out on track for real.
Yeah, not long to go now before you'll be back on track, so we look forward to seeing you there, and like you say, continuing the battles that you had endlessly on this off-season through there. So congratulations, 3rd place in the Season 4 America's Road Trip. Well done.
Thank you very much, and cheers for the good commentary, and keep up the good work. Cheers.
Alrighty, let's see whether we can get Andrew on board. Hey, Andrew, have you got us in the commentary box?
I am here, Chris.
Congratulations. We thought we might have scuppered you at half distance. We were talking you around and bigging you up, and this time you didn't become your own worst enemy.
I've overcome your dastardly commentator's curse.
Yeah, congratulations. I mean, 2nd place, what a fantastic end to the season, and you know, well deserved. You have competed at every single round, and it has only been 1 or 2 errors that have kept you from it, so you must feel pretty chuffed.
Yeah, I'm chuffed a bit. It was everything sort of fell into place for me that meant I could just get my head down and race. Luckily, in the knowledge that I'm not sure anyone can catch James Murphy, so it's no point trying, and just keeping your head down and keeping Blair at bay, which I managed to do, so yeah, it was good.
Yeah, a little bit of seas parting with Richard and Guy having a bit of an incident just ahead of you in those early races, but it did seem at the time that none of you could work out who wanted to do that chasing down.
Yeah, I was just waiting for them to crash, and they did, so that worked out well as well. But Richard did the honourable thing and tried to let Guy past, but inadvertently parked himself on the apex of the corner, so it was a little bit squeaky bum for a second, but managed to dodge it, and then yeah, the rest was what it was.
Yeah, we saw that a couple of times as well in the ensuing chaos that could have happened behind it. But certainly, like I say, it's a feel good factor that you've managed to secure 2nd place. So congratulations on that. The America's Road Trip 2nd place, not bad.
Thank you very much.
All right, so let's go and get Superman, as you say, and see whether we can get Superman James Murphy. Have you got us in the commentary box?
I have, gents. Good evening. How are you?
Well, very good.
Very good.
Again, kind of slightly disappointed that you're not giving us better races, but nonetheless a very, very impressive performance again.
I wish we need cameras, Cheesy. You need to see just how like stressed out and focused I am. It's so hard to keep at that pace. The pace of the guys, and credit to some of the new guys who come in. I'm sure you've spoken about them already, but so quick and everything's so close together that it just takes 100% focus. The only time I drifted slightly was trying to work out whether I could ease off on the last lap. The timer, it was maybe 4 seconds when I went over the line, but I couldn't work out whether I could afford it. So
I meant to say to Scott, the reason I was following you into that second last lap was for that very reason. You had enough of a gap that you could have just eased off the accelerator. But overall, we were glad to see that extra lap go. And David Rowe, I think, made some more places up, so he'd be pleased for it as well. Good teamwork there by yourself. You've obviously, we're seeing you here and on screen now, your shiny Caterham 420R, and you've been out for real, and it's not long now to the start of the season.
I have. The new spec is pretty stunning. If I'm honest, it feels on a completely different level to the previous car. I've been out with DPR. I've been out with Darren Burke, who I need to thank as well for. I was struggling a little bit around here a couple of days ago. When I started to practice, and he gave me some really good coaching last night, which proved all the difference in the end. And likewise in real life, we've been sort of starting to get settled in. He's teaching me how to drive this beast of a racing car. It's going to produce some incredible racing this year. It really is. Yeah,
great stuff. So that should all be kicking off sort of fairly shortly. But congratulations in the meantime. Another championship in your belt. caterhamracer.com, America's Road Trip Season 4 champion. Well done.
Thanks again. Yeah. Go on, Scott. Sorry.
You know what this means now. You put the target on yourself now. You know expectations. You know you've done this in the sim. You've got to go and do this for real now in the World Championship. You've got to go and win the 7 UK title. Now you've done this.
Scott, offline in secret, I'll tell you what G we're pulling around the corner with the slick tyres on, and you'll you see me, my neck will be a bit bigger.
I've already heard what the G is from the man himself from Caterham, and it's even I had my response was something I can't repeat on here for PG reasons, but I think for good reason because I couldn't believe it myself. But no, I think fantastic job as it has been all season, and like I said, I'll be looking forward to commentating on your live streams proper, and who knows, for some of those, well, not for the 427 UK races because you'll be on track with the man alongside me in the commentary box for the majority of them, but
yes, James is allowed to get second place.
Well, listen, thanks to you guys, thanks to all the sponsors in particular, thanks to all the drivers. As I said, it's getting. I'm sure you referenced using the amount of laps everyone's putting in practice. It's getting incredibly competitive, and the racing is superb. So it's really going from strength to strength. This championship is fantastic.
Cheers, James.
Well done, Superman. Good job.
Well, there you go, Scott. I think we will leave it at that. What a great way to summarise and finish off that season to say, and looking forward now to actually getting out on track for real, which isn't long away.
No, it's not. First round is May 8th and 9th at a real driver's favourite, and one which I know at least, I know you know, Chris, as well, is a circuit in real life that always lends itself to nothing less than a superb Caterham race. And we saw plenty of that in October last year. Donington Park on the national circuit is always mega for Caterham racing. It's just, there's something about the combination of Caterham and Donington Park that Donington Park for me never produces a bad race, full stop. But when you add Caterham to the mix, you had some great battles. It was also the site of a very rare, and it was also the location of a very rare site and a very, very rare event that happens, which was John Byrne being beaten in a Caterham 7 UK race. First time it ever happened all season. It was Henry Heaton that picked it up by managing to hoodwink him at the last chicane and pick up his first win. I've seen him out testing. He's got a brand new paint scheme. He's gone from chrome blue to chrome cyan or chrome turquoise, which is quite a nice looking car out there. I've seen James out testing, of course. The colour scheme you've got on the screen here, Chris, of course, this is the colour scheme that you're going to be sporting in your 7 UK car this season, for this year. It's your comeback to racing after your couple of years sabbatical. I know you're very excited about it, and you've already had now, have you, and to remind myself again, forgive me if you told me already, Have you driven this car yet?
I've only driven in the spec that we see on screen now. I have not been out in the
Right.
slicks. That happens for the first time on the 1st of April at Silverstone. So looking forward to that, getting out there, seeing all my teammates and competitors all out there hammering laps, and it's my turn now.
And I've also seen in the news as well that there is a certain Mr. Will Smith, who's also not Will Smith active, but Will Smith as in former Caterham champion Will Smith, is making a comeback as well in his car. He's with a different team this time, so he won't be in the same garage as you this year. He'll be in a different, but still with the same sort of competition. So to have him involved as well, you've also got James in the mix moving up, Gordon Sawyer staying on, amongst so many others that are in the mix as well. I haven't seen the numbers in terms of how many drivers we've got lining up on the 7 UK grid this year, but I imagine it's hopefully a nice increase from last season. And I imagine with all the updates that we've had, I'm not even racing, and I'm excited for what's going to happen, because I'll be watching with the commentary box and watching you and James and everyone else battling out on track. And if I thought the 7 UKs were exciting in the last couple of seasons, to watch them with the brand new package of the brand new dedicated Avon slicks, the new suspension, and the fact that they can go at least a second a lap quicker than they were doing last year, and that's saying something with a car that's this light and this grippy, is just incredible. So I think it's going to be quite a spectacle, not just for the 7 UKs, but I think up and down the grid. We've got the new crop of academy drivers coming in. They will come in later in the season after they'll have their first competitive session at Aintree. That'll be in a few weeks' time at their usual sprint before they join the regular Caterham Motorsport package going forward. There was a location change for the second round that was announced just a few hours ago this evening, which is unfortunately because of some restrictions going on with the Welsh Government. The Anglesey round has now been replaced by another one a week later, but it means that instead you'll be going to a venue which you visited 3 years ago, but you raced on in the opposite direction than is normally seen, which is Knock Hill. So that'll be quite exciting to watch those occasions wind their way through. I think it'll be my first time heading to Knock Hill as well, which will be quite fun to watch. And then throughout the rest of the season, there'll be plenty of great racing, which will all culminate now with the season finale at the same place where it started last year with the delayed start, Cadwell Park. And the twists and turns will certainly benefit the new 7 UK car. And given the fact we've now got a new set of academy drivers coming in, and everyone else starting to move up ranks now from academy up to road sport, the road sport guys up to 270, the 270 guys up to join some of the existing 310Rs, and then we've also now got 310R drivers moving into the brand new 7 UKs, as is the natural progression of many drivers. I don't know about you, Chris, I know you're driving, but even for me watching alongside it, everything into consideration, this has the makings of being an absolutely sensational season of Caterham racing across the board. It really has.
Yeah, if you're watching online and enjoy our racing, then it all happens for real, and it's worth getting to tracks as long as regulations allow it, and come and watch and support. And you'll see the same colour schemes and drivers that you're seeing racing on here week after week, and it's truly incredible stuff, and we really like to see the crowds there and put on a good show.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before I thank all the sponsors and stuff in a second, I just want to also give a thanks once again to Chris, and also to everyone else who takes part in these series, because of course it's a great way for the drivers to keep sharp, to keep them entertained, but also as well to push out how good Caterham racing is, not just in the esports world, but also in real life as well. And as Chris said, if restrictions allowing, if you can get to a circuit this year to watch Caterham Motorsport's official rank of championships battling it out on track, the first round is May 8th and 9th. Hopefully, spectators permitting, if people can come. If you can come and you are planning to, please make sure if you're coming to maintain all the proper social distancing protocols and COVID protocols that are in place. Of course, we are still in the middle of a pandemic, even though things are getting better. And of course, throughout the rest of the season, it's up to Knock Hill. I think we've got Silverstone coming up as well throughout the season. Steston's in there as well. Brands Hatch. And also finishing up, at least it's due to be finishing up, at Cadwell Park. There is also the possibility of Spa in the middle of the season as well, but of course, again, it depends on how Europe is at that time in terms of their ways. If you can't make it to the circuit, you can watch the racing live online. There'll be live streams for, I believe, all the rounds for the main championships in terms of at least Road Sport 270 and 310s, and where Academy and 7 UK are going to be as well. I'm sure they'll also be there too, but I know further details on those are going to be released by Caterham as of when they come up in terms of fixing those out. And I'm privileged to say that it'll be yours truly on commentary for those. And I know for some of the races, they've had this okayed from Caterham themselves, and he said that he's up for it as well. For the races when he's not competing and he's got some downtime, Chris, you're going to have a go at jump in the commentary box for real to commentate on some of your competitors, not just on the sim this time, but for watching them actually racing for real on the racetrack for once.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get into the commentary box and sort of say transfer from this virtual world into the real world, and all the new drivers and championships that sort of entails as well. Quickly take this opportunity while I'm on mic to say thank you as well, Scott, for your time and energy on this latest season. It's been great having you on board, and again, add my thanks to the sponsors who helped make all this happen. It's really, really good.
Good stuff. Well, again, if you want to watch the official first rounds of Caterham Motorsport, I'll say again, May 8th and 9th, either get to the circuit if you can, if you're allowed to. If not, watch it all online. You'll have more details of those from Caterham directly as they come up. But for the final time, we'll thank our fantastic partners once again. And again, a wholehearted thank you to all of them who have made this happen, this 4th season happen. The 5th season, of course, I'm sure will be just around the corner with the new real-life Caterham season on the horizon in the next few weeks. And Chris, I'm sure, will be hard at work behind the scenes, beavering away to make sure that gets underway as soon as possible, in line with what's happening. But for the final time, we say thank you to all of our sponsors, because for this 4th season of caterhamracer.com, the America's Road Trip has been supported and sponsored by the likes of, if I get my list up of my things, I knew I was going to miss this one, by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advice. Thank you to Dave Rivero, Derek Rowe, and everyone else at the team there to do so. Please do go and check them out. They are one of the leading catering teams out there who supply not just the 7 UKs, but all the other teams that can, championships that can run team support in the catering roster. To design and display structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens. Do go and check them out if you have any architectural needs or any bespoke simulator screens if you're setting up your own sim as well. To just add lightness, high performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7. Do go and check them out at justaddlightness.co.uk, because of course they have extra bright LED lights if you like to drive your Caterham about in the evening, or just to make sure you want to show off a bit more. Definitely one to watch out if you own a Caterham 7. And we're also supported by Darren Burke, performance driver coach, someone who has got a ton of racing experience, racing the Formula Fords and Caterhams and everything else in between. He's been helping several of our drivers, including our Season 4 champion James Murphy and Andrew Parker and a few other drivers, get into grips, not just in the real world, but in the sim as well, and helping them improve. He's a fantastic advocate for Caterham racing, a fantastic teacher. He's someone you definitely want to check out if you want to make yourself quicker, not just in the Caterham, but in any form of race car, whether it's sim or real. Do go check him out, and he'll sure make you as quick as he can. And of course, also to FPZero Simulators, who put on some fantastic equipment. I know that they are the ones who are supporting DPR Motorsport, particularly helping them out with their sim rig, but they put some fantastic simulation equipment together. Do go and check them out as well, and if you want to enhance your sim experience and try and be as quick as some of the guys here in the sim as well. Thank you ever so much to everyone who has supported Season 4. We're not going away just yet, because Season 5 is around the corner. Details of that will be up for grabs in the next few weeks whilst Chris is weaving away in the background. But for the final time, from myself, Scott Woodwiss, from Chris Hutchinson, and from everyone at caterhamracer.com, thank you ever so much for supporting us, and we'll leave you with the news that we have a brand new Season 4 champion, and it is James Murphy. But can he carry that into Season 5 and into the real world of Caterham racing? The next few weeks will only tell. But until then, thank you once again. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you racing once again very, very soon. Bye for now.
See you soon.